All right, welcome everybody to another episode of our Conscious Conversations. Today I am extremely excited and honored to introduce our guest, none other than the world famous South African Gary Player. Welcome, Gary. Thank you so much for taking the time out to join us.
Great pleasure, Pete. Look forward to addressing all your folks.
Fantastic. So I thought before we get going, I just want to let everybody know that this is obviously a little earlier. We usually do 7 p.m. Gary's on a different time zone, so to allow him, to get out and play golf later on, earlier was better. So again, thank you for making that time. I have muted everybody, so you guys can't chat. We might have a bit of time at the end to ask a few questions, but we'll see how the conversation goes. I'm sure we'll have a lot of great, interesting things to talk about, Gary. So I wanted to begin with, I've met your daughter, Jenny, and her daughter, Antonia, many years ago when I was up in Joburg at their spot at Leafy Greens and ran many courses. And I was just so impressed by them and, how they work and the amazing work that they're doing. And then obviously had the honor of meeting you and playing some golf at Goose Valley. And what struck me in spending some time with you, how you always have a supportive and kind word to anyone you're talking to. And I noticed that from the beginning. I mean, is that something you've cultivated, or is it just a natural part of your personality?
It's very hard to discuss matters like that with any authenticity when you don't know sufficient about it. It might be genes. It might be the fact that I've suffered a lot as a young person, a lot, in fact, maybe not as much as others, but suffering is suffering. I don't know, but I've always had a philosophy that, but people can't do this, unfortunately. If you want to live well and long, and I'm 85 now, and I probably am a man of about 50 when I think of my energy and my exercise level, and how I play golf still, and the energy that I have to travel around the world, because I don't believe in retirement. I think retirement is a death warrant. But the thing is that if you want to live well in a long time, you've got to eat half as much, number one. Will people do that? No. You've got to exercise twice as much as you do. Will people do that? No. You've got to laugh 3 times as much as you laugh, because the endorphins that go into your system, it feeds your body with youth. Will people laugh 3 times as much? No. And then above all, the last and final one, you got to have unmeasured love in your heart. And how many people have hate in their heart? So where do you find people to have those 4 great attributes? Very difficult. If you can, unless you get unlucky of some kind, the majority of people will live a long time. So I think that's very important, and everything stems from the mind. A lot of people always say, oh, I was so unlucky. I heard this in golf a lot. I was so unlucky, and telling me about how unlucky they are, this and that, and other forms of life. Remember, it's 10% what happens to you, and 90% how you react to it. Most people, it's 90% what happens to them, and 10% how they react to it. And I'd like to give you the most perfect example of adversity, because I think adversity is the greatest gift bestowed upon a person ever. It makes some people become depressed. It makes some people strong. And unfortunately, the world is survival of the fittest. That's unfortunately the rule of the jungle. But there was a man in America, he was a top Marine. And to be a top Marine, you've got to be a very, very tough individual. Mentally, physically, everything. And this man was out fishing with his family, and they didn't have enough petrol, so he ran up to his car, siphoned a bit out, started putting it in his boat, and unfortunately, by mistake, a spark got off and blew up in his face, and he became blind. Now, here's one of the top Marines in the country. Anyway, they told him he'd have to have care for himself for the rest of his life. He said, not on your life. He was the man that started the Braille, and he never gave up. He practiced and discovered the Braille, or was instrumental in improving it. To cut a long story short, he ended up one of the top business CEOs in the country. And I think it was President Bush at that time, gave him the award of the leading citizen in America. Now, he could have sat back and had personal health care and people around him, not health care, but care for him as he's living. But he didn't want that. He was determined to make a success. And it often reminded me on my farm when I was walking and I'd see bricks that I'd laid down, and you see this little shoot coming through. Or even on cement, if you look at kukui grass, which is one of the strongest grasses in the world, if there's a slight crack, that kukui comes through. The seed might be there for 20, 30 years, but eventually that will crack and that seed will come through. And they call that reveresco. What this young man did, and the seed coming through and persevering, is called reveresco in Latin, which means thrive in adversity. Thrive in adversity. You know, that's a big difference in having adversity and just surviving, but they've got to thrive in adversity. And realizing that adversity makes you a better person. And eventually, if you look at most people that have been really successful, I'm talking about really successful, they've not just happened. Luck is the residue of design. You're not just lucky, you've got to work for that. And you were talking about Jenny and Pete, my son-in-law and daughter. They had one of the, well, probably I think the best restaurant in the country. And they built it up themselves with their hands and treated staff well. And they did extremely well. And all I can say is I don't know of a shortcut to success. Here in America at the moment is quite interesting. You have the Democrats and you have the Republicans. And the one is a capitalism, the other one is basing their theory on socialism. Well, Winston Churchill, who's the greatest leader that the world has ever known, he and Caesar probably, said there are two places where socialism exists. One in heaven where they don't need it, and the other place is in hell where they have it every day. And so if you look at this great country, how it survived on a free enterprise system, freedom is one of the greatest gifts bestowed upon a human being. If you look at the ANC, how they fought for their freedom in South Africa and got it. But how are they handling it now? Well, I don't think as well as I'd like to see them handle it, because can you have freedom of speech? Can you say what you like? No. So freedom is freedom of speech. It's across the board. And so to me, freedom, you know, we were denied that as young people. The blacks way more than we had. I mean, we still had a white man's privilege of some sort, but we still, we didn't know what really freedom was. A jockey wasn't even allowed to ride a horse. You know, a black man wasn't allowed to play in a golf tournament. And that's why I was so pleased when I went to our president or Prime Minister John Foster and said, I said to him, I want to put a spoke in the wheel of apartheid. And he said, what are you talking about? I said, I want to bring a black golfer from America to play in our PGA, which is probably one of our two most important tournaments. I thought he's going to say, get out of the office. And he said, go ahead. But isn't it sad we had to get permission for a black man to come and play? Anyway, he came down. They called me a traitor in the airport in Cape Town. And the black people put a lot of pressure on Lee Elder not to come, but he came and it was a great success. So we've got to keep, Pete, we've got to keep realizing that life is a battle. And to be, I'm not a person who swears, but it's a great saying, life is a bitch, and then you die. So, you know, it's quite an interesting thing to see, and having traveled more miles than any human being that's ever lived now, to have seen the things that I've seen with my eyes. I went to the Berlin Wall just after it was knocked down. And if you saw what that country with socialism, what it looked like as compared to the other side of the wall, if you go to so many countries, we just got to take a map. We got to take a map and sit down for a minute and say, where is there freedom in the world anymore? It's dying. It's dying.
Well, I think key is to find that freedom within. And I think so much of that, as you said, is through the adversity struggle. And, you know, you've obviously had to deal with a lot of adversity in your life, particularly in your, you know, in your struggle to stay on top as it is as an athlete. So Maybe take us through a little bit on how, because a lot of people are dealing with fear and adversity right now with COVID. They're scared of this virus. How do you deal with fear, and how do you overcome that fear to rise above it and turn that adversity into your advantage?
I'll come back to Winston Churchill again, because a lot of young boys and young women ask me how they become a champion in golf. You just don't become, because there are millions trying and there are only a few that make it. Few out of millions. And Winston Churchill said, if you listen to this, this is the greatest saying of my life: the height that great men reached and kept were not attained by sudden flight, but while his opponents were sleeping, he was toiling upward in the night. Think about that for a minute. And these are the things that I did when I went to dinners and I got back late at night. I went to the hotel manager and you asked him for the key for the gym. He'd say no. Then I'd say, I promise you I'll bring it back and clean the gym. And I went to that gym because I had to, even though it was at 12 o'clock at night. There's no shortcut to success. Giveaway programs are never appreciated. If you look what America's done for the world, really, they've had faults, but what they've been, the great Samaritan of any country that's ever lived. How many people appreciate what they do? Very few. Winston Churchill said, why does he hate me? What have I done for him lately? And there's a lot in that. So we got to, but the big thing is we've got to educate the children at school. We don't teach them about fitness. We don't teach them about health. That your body is a holy temple. People don't worry about health. Those four examples I gave you, how many people worry about that? How many people do you think in South Africa or America practice those four things that I've gave you? Maybe 1%, 2%. So, but coming back to the adversity, it's not easy when your mother dies when you're 9 years of age and you've got to go to a school. I went to King Edward School, which actually helped save me a lot. Great education. They taught us manners, and manners maketh a man. And I used to come home an hour and a half traveling from King Edward's into town, walking across town. Can you imagine doing that at 9 years of age in the nighttime, and then getting on a tram and going out to your house and there's nobody there? Your father's working in the gold mine, your mother's dead, your brother's at war at 17. My brother went to war to fight with our allies at that time for freedom. And my brother, future brother-in-law, didn't come back. But there I'd be in that house at 9, cooking my food, making my bed, ironing my clothes, not very well. And lying in bed every night. Every night I lay there crying, wishing I was dead. Little did I realize that was the reason I was going to become a world champion. And so, I'm also a great believer in tremendous faith. People say to me, how could you become a world champion being so small and traveling from South Africa and being away from your family and living in motels and traveling with time changes? Well, for me, I really sincerely believe it was a divine gift. You cannot attain the success that I had, which is probably in the top 3 that ever lived, if I may say that humbly. You cannot attain that without some divine intervention. So one must have faith in life. And when you have faith, it means you're going to have difficulties to encounter. Because you have faith, it's not going to mean your whole life is a bed of roses. But it helps you to combat, as happening to me right now with my wife with pancreatic cancer. By having faith, and she having faith, it's a tremendous, tremendous weapon to overcome the difficulties that you encounter.
So having faith, but at the same time taking massive action to move in the direction that you want.
That's right. You can't be a dreamer. You've got to be a doer. 80% of people are dreamers, even higher. 90% are dreamers, 10% are doers.
Sure. So one of the other quotes I loved about you was, believe you said this, the harder I practice, the luckier I get. That's
right. I was playing in Texas and I was hitting some shots to the hole and I holed one, and this Texan said, that was lucky. And then he said, can you do it again? I said, no, I don't think so. But I knocked it again into the hole. Then the third time I knocked it into the hole. Well, but prior to that, he said, if you can knock the third one to the hole, I'll give you $500. He peeled out 5 $100 bills. In those days, I didn't have much money at all. And I knocked the third one in, and he had Red Man tobacco in his mouth, and he spat it out, and he said, wow, that's the luckiest thing I've ever said. And just spontaneously, I said, luck is the residue of design, and the harder I practice, the luckier I get. And that's been a saying that's gone across the world. And it's so true. You have to work hard. You can't be a system of give away for nothing. It doesn't work, as we've seen throughout history.
So, I mean, that's fantastic. It's really looking at overcoming fear is about just stepping up again and again and again and facing it over and over again. You know, you can't hide from it. You can't hide from life.
No, right. It's like this COVID now. Now, everybody has their opinion. And my opinion is, I look at how many people, how many people are dying and of COVID, and how many people are dying of obesity-related diseases. 50 times, 100 times, 1,000 times more people. How many people are dying of heart attacks? Way, way more than COVID. How many people are dying of cancer? 1 out of every 2 men will get cancer. 1 out of every 3 women will get cancer. Now that is really serious. These stats are amazing when you look at them. How many people are dying of car accidents? In our country, how many people are being murdered every year? And you look at how many people are dying of flu or TB. I mean, I can't live in fear with COVID. It's become almost a political thing now. And the thing is that I'm not going to worry about COVID. If I get it, I get it. There's got to be X amount of people die, but the comparison of people dying of COVID is infinitesimal compared to what's happening with these other diseases. Must I live in fear now? I mean, I can't live in fear like that. It's like saying, am I going to get cancer? Well, you can do what you can. Yes, you got to wear a mask with COVID. You don't have to wear a mask on a golf course. You're out in the open. But some people believe you have to do that. You've also got to build up an immune system. I like what they do in Sweden. People that are old and have bad immune systems and have diseases of some kind, they got to stay at home. They can't go out because their immune system is weak. But the rest have to get out. And you have to work. You can't, more people will die from a bad economy than COVID by a mile. We've got to get out and put food on these people's tables and give them a job and keep them working. We have so many people living in our country at the moment. We really have an overpopulation of people. We don't have enough electricity, enough water, enough food. They're killing the farmers, and our food is going to get less and less and less. And, the jobs, we've got to really, we've got to do some thinking in South Africa. We've got to do some serious thinking.
So Gary, I mean, let's get into your health practices then, because that's perfect. A lot of people, I think the most people who aren't scared of flu, this particular strain, really it's because they've done the work on themselves. They know that they're healthy. They know that they're fit. So maybe take us through your fitness state. I mean, at your age, what do you do to keep yourself fit? How important is that in your life?
Well, it's easier to get a camel through the eye of a needle than to get people to do exercise. You must understand that. Very, very few people exercise. You see people on bicycles and in gyms. And I was in Cape Town the other day and I said to this man, gee, your gym's very busy. He says, yes, we got 2,000 members. I said, and how many gyms do you have in Cape Town? He said, oh, probably 10. I said, that's 20,000 people out of a population of many, many millions. People just don't want to exercise. They don't want to exercise. You have to exercise. You have to. If you want to live well and live a long time, you have to exercise. Now, there are exceptions, people that are fat and that don't look after themselves and eat all the junk, and they live to 90. Winston Churchill had half a bottle of brandy a day and didn't sleep very well. He had sleep deprivation. He lived to 93. But those are exceptions. You have to exercise. They're finding now that exercise, and we're only in our infancy. I spoke to the head of the Cleveland Clinic, which is the most advanced clinic, or as advanced as there is on this planet. And they said in 14 years' time, they'll be able to give you a definite 10-year extra lifespan with the things they're finding out. And he said, the way we eat, the way we sleep, the way we laugh, and the way we exercise, these were our infancy, and how we set and program our minds. He says, we're in our infancy as finding out longevity for the human being. Very interesting times, I must say. But we got to do it in the schools, Peter. This is where we need it, to teach the schools to children. We still have great schools in South Africa where our children have good manners. That's so important. And as I said earlier, manners maketh a man. And you have to teach children to exercise. You have to have children to greet people properly, take their hats off, stand up when a lady comes in the room. We can't forget those things that made us a great nation in South Africa. South Africa is an incredible country when you think about it. It's got the best climate, we've got wonderful people, but are we heading in the right direction? Debatable, debatable.
So I believe you did a somersault off a diving board recently.
Well, I ran a sprint, and then I did a backflip in Greece off the boat, and President Obama said to me, man, he says, are you crazy to do a backflip at 82? Now I'm 85, and I did a forward somersault. And but this is just to show people that, you know, age is in the mind. It's only in the mind. You've got to be able, people, we are built, we are given the gift to live to 100. That's what we should be doing. But we take too many medicines, we overeat, we smoke, we drink excessively. South Africa is one of the most excessive drinking countries in the world. So, you know, it's going to catch you. There's no question about it. You might be the odd freak, but your body, the way I look at it, your body is a holy temple, and look after it as such. And health, it's only when you live like I am to 85 now, and you see the tragedies that I've seen. My mother died of cancer. My sister died of cancer. My daughter had a breast removed. My niece here has had cancer of the lung and the stomach, and she did, after she had a 2-year stint, she served her church for 2 years in South America. And now my wife has pancreatic cancer. Everybody's going to get cancer. I'm telling you, 1 out of every 2 men, 1 out of every 3 women. And obesity, remember this, obesity, you talk about COVID, obesity is 1,000 times worse than COVID, 1,000 times. You know, that's just a saying. It isn't exactly 1,000, but it's multiple. I mean, you can't even make a comparison. And South Africa is becoming, particularly the woman, the most obese nation on the planet. And this is what we've got to teach children in the schools. We've got to teach them to exercise. We've got to teach them the things that make us a productive country. You can't be productive if you're obese. You can't be productive if you're not given a great education. There's so many lessons in life that come from school that set us up to be a great country.
So, I mean, that takes us perfectly into diet. You have some perspectives on diet and health, obviously. What is your current thinking on eating and food, and what keeps a person healthy?
Basically, at the moment, I would say I'm a fruitarian, and I also believe in a great plant-based diet. I've had no breakfast this morning whatsoever. I don't believe you need 3 meals a day at all. In fact, you could get by quite comfortably on 1 meal a day if you eat properly. My daughter Jennifer and Peter have helped me a lot in our diet and how we eat. But I have an occasional steak, not very often. I don't eat a lot of meat. I don't touch bacon. I'm not telling people they've got to do this because people have their choice. I don't eat bacon at all. Well, I was with my daughter Jennifer and I was feeling nauseous, and I was in Hawaii. And I had this ice cream because I loved ice cream. She said, Dad, it's telling you that it's bad for you. So I haven't had a piece of ice cream or a piece of bacon for 24 years now. And so I don't like to have all these soft drinks. So one soft drink's got 10 teaspoons of sugar in. People say, well, what about Coca-Cola? But Coca-Cola have waters, they have fruit juices. They don't have a Coca-Cola. They do a pretty good job when you think across the board and what they do for charity. So you've got to watch what you eat. I never would ever have a glass of milk, never. I mean, I'll have some in a cup of coffee, but milk I don't think is very good for you. And these are all my humble opinions. I'm not telling people they've got to do this because, you know, there's been great controversy with books on diet, and it's like genetics. We know a hell of a lot about nothing. So I think you've got to find out what your body likes and dislikes and gets rid of. So that's how it is. I have a little bit of chicken, not much. Mostly, I love to eat fruit and love to eat green vegetables and juices and salads. There's so many great foods that you can have. But we have been brainwashed from a kid. You know, you just got to have a steak. You got to have bacon. You got to have milk. You got to have bread. I don't believe in bread at all. I think bread is a bunch of hogwash. But you do find some breads, like we were in Graaf Reinet. They made bread there at Johan Rupert's hotel. There was the best bread I ever had in my life. Now they've redone the hotel and they've changed the bread, so they're going back to a normal bread. So they had the best bread in the world, but now they've got rid of it. So it's got to have a lot of roughage in it. But to eat properly, you know, if you don't put the right gas in your car, it ain't going to go. And that's what we got to remember with our body. If we don't put the right gas, the minute you starting to put on weight, you better stop, because when you're overweight, you are starting to die. And the big thing is, you better make sure. Right now with this COVID, you know, I'm staying with my daughter here. I came here to receive the Medal of Freedom, which is the biggest honor you could get in America and in the world, for as far as I'm concerned. I came for 3 days to get the medal. Well, COVID came and we had to postpone it. And I've been with my daughter, not for 3 days, but for 6 months locked in.
Wow.
So this is what happens in life. Life is full of, anybody who thinks they're going to have a life of pure joy or dreaming.
Well, you see the silver lining in every dark cloud, right?
Absolutely. You've got to do that. There's a song, be happy. Don't make trouble. You make it double, man. Be happy. And laughter. I laugh all the time. I keep laughing. I tease my grandchildren all the time. They tease me. You've got to keep laughing. It's the most wonderful medicine. Just think about when you're feeling sad and you're crying as compared to when you're laughing. Man, it's a massive difference, not just a little.
Absolutely.
And Jenny, you know Jenny, she's always laughing. My children are great laughers. My dad, they call him Laughing Harry. And he would have lived to be 100, but he worked in a gold mine like a dog's life.
So just, you touched on medicine there. Tell me a bit about garlic and honey. I believe it's one of your favorites.
Oh, yeah. Well, I believe you've got to, you know, my son-in-law makes a salsa here with, is it cilantro? What's it? What's the word I'm thinking of? What's the veg, the green, the cilantro?
Cilantro, yeah, coriander.
Yeah, cilantro and red onions and garlic and tomatoes and green peppers and jalapenos. And I tell you, I have that all the time. It's the most, I think one of the great secrets of life are honey, but proper good honey. There's honey and there's bad honey. A lot of the honey that I buy, I see in the shops now, that come from a certain country, not our country, and it's really not all fresh honey. Be careful what you buy. And good honey and garlic. I think garlic is so important to have at least 2 cloves of garlic every week of your life. When you've got diseases in a place called Hippocrates over here, they give some of the people 10 and 20 cloves a day, and they cure so many people. But also red onions. I think you should have lemon water every night of your life. Take a little piece of lemon and squeeze it in water, put it next to your bed, or drink it at night when you wake up or in the morning. There are lots of little things you must do. Don't eat a lot of bread. Don't get your stomach bloated. And you've got to keep your tummy working. I had one of the greatest friends I ever had was a black man at Mahubas Kloof on our farm there. He said, you've got to keep your inside clean. Otherwise it goes rotten inside. Sure. And he was true. But my goodness me, I come back to the schools. Why don't we have one subject a day on health, which is so important, and how to eat properly? But a lot of people, you say, how do you eat? We eat very well. I said, I can see that. You eat extremely well. I don't want to tell them, but they're 20 and 30 pounds overweight. Yeah, they're champion eaters. You go out to dinner with those people, they butter your hand. They all eat like it's the Last Supper. So, you know, but I tell you, it's a very difficult subject. When you talk about these things, people are not interested in them, unfortunately.
Yeah, food and exercise, right? 2 challenging topics. So, you know, you were talking there about, you know, keeping the things flowing in digestive system. But I think in life, that's also, I think you have an amazing way of just being able to let go of the past and move into the new and the future. How, you know, is that, again, you know, is that some mental training you've done, you know, being able to say like sell your farm and just move into the future without that? I mean, it's got to be challenging.
Well, you know, that farm I had at Colesberg, you had to see that to believe it. And I laid the bricks and helped the building the walls and the stables and things like that. And, you know, we sold it. I mean, with Vivian not being that well, and, you know, with killing the farmers, you know, you don't want to live with that, being out in the countryside as elderly people. And I sold this farm, which for me, you know, I think about it at least every week of my life. But, you know, you got to go ahead. And my daughter, Michelle, had a wonderful way of getting over it for me. She said, life is seasons. You have different seasons in your life. And she said, you had that for 42 years, which was a thrill of your lifetime. And now you've got something else, another season coming up, and you've got to make another season. And so that's what you've got to do. And I love my thoroughbred racehorses. I love studying genetics. I love breeding. And so, you know, I'm still very involved in that. I'm still very busy traveling all around the world, designing golf courses and giving after dinner talks and playing exhibitions and doing company days. I represent a lot of companies and I love to work. I mean, I think rest is rust. You've got to keep that body moving. Keep it moving. When you go to an airport, don't go up in the elevator, climb up the stairs, damn it. You know, whenever you can, go walk. Keep the body moving. Don't get in a car just to go 100 or 200 yards. Walk. Get off your butt. Because I tell you, as you get older, those legs get weaker. And you do pay the price. If you don't exercise and you don't adhere to those 4 principles I was telling you about it will come and haunt you as sure as God made little apples sometimes. They say you can never be too thin or too rich. I'll take the thin. I'll take the thin. You know, it's interesting. I was talking to a caddy here in Philadelphia the other day. And I said, you enjoy your work? He says, you know, I love my work. I'm out playing. I'm not playing. I'm caddying 18 holes a day. And I put 2 bags on my shoulders to make more money. And he says, you know, Gary, I'm not a rich man. But he says, I'm healthy. And he says, you know, I see these people come out to the golf club. They're billionaires and millionaires. They're fat. They're going to die any day. They can't walk 1 hole. They're out of breath. He says, it's not worth it all. And Steve Jobs, you know, he was a multi-billionaire. When he was dying of cancer as a young man, he said, I'll sleep in the streets. Let me have my health. To hell with all this money. I'll give it all away. Health is wealth.
Maybe for those people who arrived late, remind us of those 4 principles. You said that so nicely at the beginning.
Well, first of all, I said, if you want to live well and long, you have to eat half of what you eat. You don't need 3 meals a day. Don't eat a lot at night because you don't put petrol in your car when you park it in the garage at night. Number 2, you've got to exercise twice as much. Number 3, you've got to laugh 3 times as much. How many days do you have where you don't laugh? Laugh, the endorphins in your system, they feed your body for youth. And number 4, you've got to have unmeasured love in your heart. Look at the hatred that's happening in South Africa right now with certain political parties and people. Look at the hatred. You can't survive. Martin Luther King, who was this great man in America, lived under the apartheid system in America. He said, you fight hate with love. What did our great Nelson Mandela do? He fought hatred with love. I was around him an awful lot for 3 years. We raised a lot of money for young black children together. He was a man that had no revenge or hatred. What about Mahatma Gandhi? They knocked him to the ground, the British. He went across India with a pair of sandals and a robe and a walking stick. And they said, don't worry about a coolie walking across India. He's have no influence. One of the most influential men that ever lived. He stopped 1 million people from a war by fasting. And look at the Kennedy brothers in America who fought for freedom. And of those 5 people I've mentioned, 4 were assassinated.
Sure.
So, you know, life is very interesting, isn't it? But you've got to be positive. You know, I often tell people when I meet them and they think they got a problem, I say, wait a minute, let me sit down and tell you some of the problems that I've seen in the world with my own eyes. And you'll realize you don't have a problem. You don't have a problem at all. Always think of the good things you have.
Attitude,
Write them down
gratitude.
on a piece of paper. Write them down on a piece of paper. The great things you have and the bad things you have. Your good things far outnumber the bad things. And you've got to have strength of mind. You've got to make a comparison with other people in the world that are really and truly suffering. You know, can you imagine in the wars, and will we ever learn about wars? No. There will always be wars. We've got people in South Africa talking about fighting at the moment. How can you ever, can't people realize what's happened in wars? Don't they realize the tragedy from all aspects? The economy, the lives of mothers and fathers and children. Don't they realize this? And then you've had the great leaders of the world that I spoke to you about. They all said, you fight hate with love. You cannot fight hate with hate. You cannot fight fire with, you can't fight with fire. And, you know, when I played in America in 1969, I was playing in one of the 4 most important tournaments in the world, and I lost it by 1 shot. I am from South Africa, and I was from South Africa, and they demonstrated against me because of our government in South Africa. They threw ice in my eyes. They threw telephone books in my back. They screamed on my backswing. You know, golf is a game of pretty much silence. They threw balls between my legs. They charged me out on the green. We had policemen walking around with us. Policemen sleeping in my house every night for 2 years were threatening to kill me. I wasn't bitter about that. I said, I'm from South Africa with a bad system. It's one of the prices I have to pay as being a South African. You can't get bitter in life. You can't get bitter. And I met those people. I went and met them who were demonstrating against me and discussed and debated things with them. And I said, why don't you send one of your representatives to South Africa and check on me? Let them see what I'm trying to do in South Africa. I sponsored young black golfers. I resigned from our PGA because they wouldn't put black people on our committee. I sponsored black golfers. I brought black golfers to South Africa. I sponsored schools, all these kind of things. That's all I was concerned about. I'm doing the right thing. I'm not going to worry what people say. Even today, there are people in South Africa say, what does Gary Player ever did? Because they never knew what I did when I was a young man or what actually was taking place. You know, when we were young people, we must never forget, for people, most people in South Africa now, they don't know anything about apartheid. Apartheid was 25 years ago. They don't know about it. It was no joke living in apartheid, particularly as a black man or a black woman. But there was no what you call real freedom. And that's why, one, if you just go back for a minute and think what the soldiers did, the American soldiers did in Normandy, they were mowed down by the Germans like flies. Our people in South Africa went to war for freedom. People fought and battled for freedom. And freedom is a special, special word. And this is what all governments must realize. And truly, don't talk about freedom. Don't talk about a democracy. Act accordingly.
Absolutely. And, you know, that's day to day in your life and with all the people you interact with. If you're coming from a space of love or a space of fear, your results are going to be radically different.
Right, right. And we've got to teach. There's Winston Churchill again. I keep quoting him because he was the greatest leader. He said, the youth of a nation are the trustees of posterity. And that's where you've got to put your efforts into. Don't teach them to have hatred. Teach them to build and to love. You know, I'll never forget when they were demonstrating in Berkeley University in 1961, I think it was, and President Reagan was the president. And these hippies were saying, oh, we believe in love, not war. And Reagan said, I don't think you're capable of doing either. And I see what's happening in America today. I mean, These are not the true Americans that are doing that. They're burning places down, taking down statues. You've got to leave statues there. For example, the statue, in my opinion, of Verwoerd. I mean, there was a man who had invented apartheid with Malone and the other people. That statue should never have been pulled down. That statue should be there in Pretoria with a plaque underneath it and say, now, we want you young people to see what these people did. They invented a system that was poison. And we're leaving the statue for you to remind you of what a terrible system it is. When you pull down statues, young people don't know what existed. You don't have any history. You can go to France today. You can go to France and see the guillotine. What a barbaric way of killing people. But it makes you think. When you leave there, you realize how wrong it was. Every country needs history. And when I see people, you know, taking an old lady in a wheelchair and throwing her into the street of 93, if somebody did that to my mother, I'd go mad. I don't know what I'd do to a person like that. And you see them shooting a wonderful black policeman looking after this little lady outside a store. They shoot the policeman, knock her to the ground, and loot her store. For some known reason, people in South Africa as well, we think when you can go and loot stores, you can just go and loot stores. You can't do that. You can't run a society without law and order. That can never exist to be successful.
And maybe not watching as much TV and inundating ourselves with fear would probably help us stay happier day to day.
Yes, well, that's right. But remember this, Pete, you have a choice. You have a choice to be happy or to be sad. A lot of people choose sad, not me, man. I'm going to be choosing happy.
So, well, Gary, we've gone through so much stuff. I know that you want to get going to play some golf. Thank you for spending some time with us and sharing all your knowledge over the years. I'm sure people have gotten a lot of good stuff out of today.
I hope so. Lovely to talk to them, Pete. And my love to all of your clients here. Bye.
Thank you so much. And yeah, I hope to see you on the golf course again sometime soon here in Plett once traveling is allowed again.
All right. Don't tell your clients about your swing. Keep it a secret. Okay.
Thank you everyone for joining us today, and we'll see you again next week. Okay, bye.
Okay. All right. Bye-bye. You want to have 3 questions?
Oh, okay. Let's see. Does anyone have any questions? Guys, you got 1 or 2 minutes. I'm looking at the chat screen to see if there are any questions. I think we've covered everything, Gary. No one's got any questions.
All right. Okay.
Fantastic.
Okay. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Give your wife my love.
I will do. Thank you. And yours.
Thank you. Thank you.